I'm being joined by a political analyst, a social commentator, Mr. Majid Dahiru. He joins us live here in Abuja. So it's good to see you. Thank you so much indeed for coming tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's begin in Kano. How interesting is the scenario playing out in the city for you?
It's very interesting as well as intriguing. So if you ask me, I would say politics brought in Sanusi Lamido as Emir in 2014. Politics took him out in 2020. And politics has returned him back again as Emir in 2024. So it's all politics.
Fundamentally?
Fundamentally, it's politics.
And perhaps what we are saying is that he's probably not even in the middle of the politics. The politics is being played in and around him. And the main actor, because we had this conversation yesterday, and there are accusing fingers being pointed that he may just be maybe a king, a queen, a pawn in the chessboard, and this is being played in and around him by political actors. But what does this portend for the throne, for example?
It definitely demystifies it. It diminishes it. So it simply tells you that in a matter of days, as was in this case, in a matter of just about 3 days, an emirate that was created, 5 emirates that were created, we are reconstituted into one, and all 5 emirs were all dethroned technically, and another emir was reappointed. So, I mean, it removes that aura, that mystique around such a preeminent traditional institution that has endured the test of time for several centuries. And it's unfortunate that politicians somehow do not know how to draw the limits when it comes to the use of their powers. And that's what we've seen. Again, in 2014, if you remember, maybe Sanusi Lamido Sanusi wasn't the most suitable candidate to be Emir of Kano.
There's a lot of controversy then.
Exactly.
About the choice and
yes.
who is the most fit or the most suitable for the throne at the time.
But the political leaders of the state also played politics by his appointment. They wanted to use that to get back at former President Jonathan, who was having a running battle with Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, who was just being suspended as CBN governor. And that was essentially the reason why he was brought in. He became a figure that they could use to impugn on the sensibilities, the political sensibilities of the central government at the time. And when he outlived his usefulness, and when he became, that consistent Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, that is an activist, essentially, who does not have that demeanor, that character that is expected of the occupant of a conservative stool like that of the Emirate of Kano. He also became a problem for them because he was simply being his consistent self. When he criticized the administration of Goodluck Jonathan, he wasn't doing it because he wanted to be an APC member. It was just his artist. That was just him being himself.
That is the usual, the normal Sanusi in his character.
That's restless intellectual who is like a rebel with a cause. And so some other people thought, okay, we could use him to advance our political interest. But he defied that impression they had of him because he continued along that trajectory. So as an emir, he refused to just be seen and not heard. And so he was heard loudly, speaking against all forms of social ills, retrogressive traditions and cultural practices, and as well as bad governance, something that was not very usual with emirs in such a conservative region. And so he ran into trouble quickly with his own home state government. And one thing led to the other, he had to be removed. But when he was removed again, he also became a symbol of resistance because it was believed that his punishment for being vocal was because he opposed the government of Umar Ganduje. And so the opposition, the party led by Kwankwaso, rallied around him and also made the campaign promise out of their effort to become governor in the last election by saying we're going to return him and reconstitute the 5 emirates into one. And so again, they won and they have brought him back. I mean, the governor said declared that it was a campaign promise I've just fulfilled.
I mean, you see how he was banished to Nasarawa State,
yes,
and how there are court issues on whether or not he should go to Awe. In Nasarawa State, eventually he got his freedom and is able to move around the way he should have been. it was some kind of humiliation, a lot of people would think, for a very vocal and a restless scholar like you referred to him. But I remember, and I like our viewers to go to our YouTube page and go to my interview on Politics Today with the then governor, Abdullahi Ganduje, who said, look, the throne is a conservative throne, and as such, in fact, the way he described to me in that interview is that there is a sort of a gag, a political and a public gag for anyone who ascends to that throne, to the extent that he said, look, even you see the veil upon in the mouth
it's
of
symbolic.
Emir is symbolic, and according to the governor, it's supposed to be a sort of a gag, a sort of a stop, I mean, in some way, but he says that Madam Sanusi Lamido had gone beyond the symbolic gag that throne has given him, but now that he's back, and we've seen him speaking up, even as a CBN governor, against institutions, against the establishment, outside of office, he's been very vocal, and he said it several times. He's one of those who said the North was in trouble because of out-of-school children and poverty. But if you look at it right now, what kind of future does this portend for the traditional institution in Nigeria? So it does look like every 4 years now, there is some kind of usurpation or the dethronement happening in one of Kano is probably the third most influential,
one of the most revered,
absolutely,
and one of the most influential,
absolutely,
traditional institutions.
And for our viewers to know that Kano Emirate is not only an administrative throne, it's also a spiritual throne. It has its own traditional leadership quality that he has. So in some ways, it's very, very influential.
It is very influential, politically, traditionally, and spiritually as well. Be one of the largest emirates in northern Nigeria. As to the future of the throne, one thing is clear. While it is true that it is a conservative throne, it's a conservative institution that is a part and parcel of the ruling establishment in northern Nigeria, as at the time that the Emir became Emir in 2014, the northern region was in such a trouble, culturally, traditionally, economically, politically, and even religiously, that the influential rulers of the North could no longer sit idly by and allow things to degenerate. And so that was why, yes, a lot of us had also thought that emirs are not supposed to speak out in the manner Sanusi was speaking. But let it be pointed out that his statements, his public intervention, were largely apolitical and non-partisan. They were straight to the issues, core issues. And he was very careful by not aligning himself with any political party, at least openly. And so one would have thought that the political leadership of the North, those that are running the democratic arm of the leadership of the North, would have seen Sanusi as something of a Moses out of the household of Pharaoh that was trying to engineer change from within and to lead this change by saying, look, we no longer give stamp of authority, of religious authority, of traditional authority to certain cultural practices that has held down this region for as long as you can remember. He was always lamenting the fact that northern Nigeria seems to be the poorest region in the world, ranking the lowest on all known indices of human development. That was something of concern. And when you have a region in such a trouble, as has been manifesting through the intractable or seemingly intractable Boko Haram insurgency, the problem of out-of-school children, disease and all such, negative development indices, one would not entirely fault Emir Sanusi, and for that matter, any other traditional ruler that is influential enough to add their voice to some level of cultural revolution and should also lead by example. So I had thought that Ganduje should have taken Sanusi's intervention then as a form of open advice to do the right thing. And when he failed to heed some of the critical, pieces of advice that the monarch was giving out, and he became, adversarial towards him, it was as though he was doubling down on some of the shortcomings of his administration. And when you have a governor who had that extra baggage of being seen on tape, seemingly accepting what looked like bribes from a contractor working on some projects in the state under his administration. That put a dent on him. So, and when he decided to move against Sanusi, I think Sanusi enjoyed so much of public sympathy and empathy, such that the actions of Ganduje in splitting the Emirate into 5 and dethroning Sanusi eventually, they didn't enjoy the level of legitimacy that they would have wanted it to enjoy. And that is why today you might observe that it will look as though many people in Kano, I don't know whether they're in the majority, actually welcome this change. Because it was believed that the splitting of that Emirate into 5 was born out of malice. It was not out of any altruistic reason to extend developments to every part of the, old Kano Emirate. And so what has happened today enjoys some level of legitimacy and acceptance on the part of the people. In any case, the ruling party in the state has said it was a campaign promise, and we voted into power on that basis, and we have just fulfilled it.
Yeah, a court order coming from Justice Lehman's court, which the court order is basically an ex parte order preventing Governor Abba Yusuf from reinstating Emir Muhammad Sanusi II back onto the throne. A federal high court, that is the jurisdiction of that court, and he altered also the implementation of a new law that abolished the 4 emirates of Bichi, Gaya, Karaya, and Rano. And the governor has been reacting to say, look, that order was granted by Justice Lima. And according to him, he said Justice Lima is in the United States.
So at the time the order was issued.
And
he was going to report him to the appropriate authorities, meaning that he has disregarded that order, and he has gone ahead to issue the letter of reappointment to Emir Sanusi as the 16th Emir of Kano. And as we speak now, the Emir of Kano today is Muhammad Sanusi II, and is the Emir of one united Kano. And the order emanating from that High Court appears to be of no effect as we speak.
What's the implication of that?
Well, I'm sure those who went to court to get this order will have to probably go back to the same court to report them as well, to report the governor to the judge to say, well, he's going to report you to somebody else. And so what do you have to do about that? So it's going to be a long run battle in the illegal arena.
If the governor is challenging the legitimacy of the court,
yes,
in the sense that he says the judge needs to now prove that he was actually...
Exactly. So it's going to be a long-drawn legal battle that will even have administrative dimension.
This is actually getting interesting, isn't it?
It's getting interesting.
Yeah, and there are those who believe that this is a battle between Ganduje and Kwankwaso.
Yes.
Fundamentally. And this was a former governor and a former deputy governor who were together for 8 years.
For 8 years. Even long before then. They've been associates.
And you imagine what could have happened is a tussle, and we do know the politics of Kano and how important, if you want to win Nigeria, you must be able to convince the voters in Kano.
But the problem is this. Even without being vocal, as was alleged, Emir Sanusi or any other emir would have been in trouble with any governor of Kano who feels is either too influential and not kowtowing enough to his authority. I mean, the former emir of Kano, Alhaji Ado Bayero, had a running battle as well with Kwankwaso, but it was managed because, of course, you're talking about an elderly statesman as an emir who had wisdom of time and experience. And so it was managed, well managed. After all, even in the Second Republic, the former governor of Kano, Alhaji Abubakar Aribi, also had the same issues with Ado Bayero, who wasn't even vocal, who was barely heard, and was just seen as a flamboyant, symbol of the glorious past of a 1,000-year-old ruling dynasty. They had issues, which also led to the balkanization of his Emirate council area and some other punitive measures as well. And there were indications that if Abubakar Aribi had returned as second-term governor, probably would have given Ado Bayero the treatment that Ganduje had given to Sanusi, Lamido Sanusi. I think our governors, Nigerian governors, increasingly have become like lion kings. They're very territorial. They do not want rivalries at all, either from their predecessors, powerful traditional rulers, or even powerful individuals.
Or even dissension.
Any form of dissension at all. They're like autocrats, democratic autocrats, that do not want anybody or anything or any entity at all to challenge their authority. And that is something we need to address as a people. Our democracy is not liberal enough, and you cannot have lion kings, quote and unquote, rolling up, because we're not in the animal jungle. We had this kind of impunity happens. I mean, you dethrone an emir, created 5 emirates, and that one comes, consolidates all of them, throw all of them away. In 48 hours, they must leave the palaces, and you have reintroduced, I mean, re-enthroned the former dethroned emir. This does not happen in a community of human beings.
I wish I could take you into the assessments of the Tinubu government, but we're totally out of time. Thank you so much. Majid Dahiru, a political analyst. Well, you've just put your teeth biting too hard on this issue of the Kano Emirate leadership. But thank you so much for the insight you have shared. I appreciate the time so much.